I'm hoping to catch your attention by making the claim that we could draw this fan assembly in 5 seconds. There's a single fan blade copied. I've asked for 30 copies and we'll equally distribute them around that arc. What you're looking at is DrawExact, our new drawing app. Its focus is on drawings where it's the geometry that matters, precision, accuracy and alignment. It's completely free, and we've focused strictly on 2 design priorities. One is making it simple and easy to use, but not at the expense of drawing capabilities. And the other is to search for a way of working which helps you, when you use it, be fast and focused. These are DrawExact built-in example drawings, and they'll give you a good sense of the sorts of drawings DrawExact is good for. Let's start with an engineering drawing. And maybe I'll show you how to put in one of these dimensions. The aim is to show you how quick and easy it is. A horizontal dimension from that point to that point with the label there. Here's a graphics design drawing. It's based on the geometry of these arcs that have been rolled together to touch. You see that circle in there? Let's recreate that phenomena down here. I'd like a fillet between that arc and that arc, and then I'd like to grow that round into its full circle representation. And to finish off, I'll trace an arc through these 3 points. So that's showing how convenient it is to work quite efficiently with circles. When it comes to technical and scientific diagrams, you've always got a choice between using dedicated software which knows about the type of diagram you're making and tries to help you, but sometimes doesn't let you lay it out exactly as you wish, or taking DrawExact's approach, which is more about thinking about it as something you draw. So for example, I could bring back this arrangement and just stick down another one there with complete and utter mastery of the geometry, and sometimes that's a more convenient approach. Another type of drawing that people often use DrawExact for is how it works diagrams. And it's particularly at home when the geometry is a little bit on the challenging side. It makes pretty light work of geometry like this, for example, not least because you only have to draw one tooth and the rest is done by manipulating the individual tooth by copying it in patterns and rotating it and so forth. This shows how DrawExact can be used to make materials to help teach some STEM subjects, and in particular subjects matter which really lends itself or needs to have diagrams to explain it. And DrawExact puts that power in your hands. You can create your own drawings. And it adds the sort of benefit of having a bit of drama, because you can voice over it like I'm doing now and get the sense of a moving pointer and highlights and things, maybe even move something, or a bit of theatre like this reveal at the end. It's also great for exploring movement patterns like this runner's stride, gradually changing. Let's finish this last one. But we need to rotate the lower leg we've been working with to signify it having gone a bit further. Maybe the foot kicked up a bit, like that. So you can see how you're building up, by rotating, building up pictures of movement. I'm going to change the subject now and just point out what the 3 things are that make DrawExact really quite different from drawing apps that have gone before. I suppose if we were very serious, we'd call them differentiators or unique selling points, but we're not very serious, so we call them superpowers and we give them names. But they're quite important because people have no reason to switch away from the drawing apps that they know and love unless there's a good reason, and if anything will provide a good reason, it'll be one of these 3 superpowers, but you can be the judge of that. So let's get started with the first one. The shape shifter superpower. It's kind of copy and paste reimagined. So there's a copy, and I could just paste by clicking. But what's more useful is I can say, well, actually, let's have some which are half the size, scale 0.5, and now let's rotate them as well. Rotate minus 30. And now let's see what they would look like if I spread some along that line. Maybe 8. Oh yes, I like that. And when I click, that's the paste. So the shape shifter superpower is a little bit of magic in between a copy and paste. Oh, you can mirror it as well, by the way, about any axis. And it obviously is a very productive way of producing a a lot of detailed drawing without having to draw it all manually by one at a time, which would be agonisingly slow. But actually the real benefit isn't quite so obvious. The real benefit is that you can do this from one drawing into another, and it essentially makes all the drawings you've ever done a library of reusable components, because they don't have to be the right way up, the right angle, the right size. You can scale them. Think about a bolt. You could scale a bolt down so that you'd only ever need to draw one bolt. So that's the shape shifter superpower. This is the second of the superpowers, called infinite canvas. Again, actions speak louder than words for this. If I make a copy of the whole boat, I can zoom out to make the canvas bigger, and then I've got room to put another one in. I can now zoom to fit, and I could maybe do some experimental changes to this version, this copy. But I've still got the reference copy right next to it, and I can zoom in on both. I could copy and paste back and forth, and it's an extremely comfortable way of working on variations. And I can zoom out as far as I like. I mean, the canvas has no limits, literally. So that's very, very useful. But the canvas is also infinitely small, which sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But let me show you what I mean. This boat at the moment is 5,000 something units long. Just keep that in your mind, 5,000 somethings. And if I zoom into the front half of the boat, and then zoom into the name perhaps, and zoom into the first part of the name, and you can now see there's a bird inside that letter D. So what's going on there? Let's zoom into its front half, zoom into its head, zoom into its eye, zoom into that little tiny graphic there. So do you remember the length of the boat was 5,000 and something? Well, we're now looking at a detail which is just, if you look at the R field, 0.027. So the zoom factor, the zoom multiplier, is enormous. And it's not a party trick. That's useful because when you're designing something in 2D, you'll get the big picture dimensions right like this, and then you kind of think hierarchically, and you go down to the next level of detail to maybe design the rudder assembly. And then towards the end of that, you might zoom in here and say, well, I'm really not sure about that corner. I might do some micro work here. So in other words, it supports thinking hierarchically. And of course, all that detail is captured in the drawing. So the single drawing contains all that hierarchical thinking in one convenient package. So that's the infinite canvas superpower. This drawing will eventually reveal the third superpower, but it's a bit of a mystery. It's kind of in stealth mode, which you'll see in a minute. This is talking about how you actually put the lines and the arcs and the text into your drawing in the first place, which we haven't really covered. The drawing exists to document the various automatic construction techniques, and I'm going to illustrate just a couple to give you a feel for them. And we'll start with normals. A normal just means a right angle, so this line is normal to that line. So speaking of which, what if we wanted to draw a line that started there and went up here 10 units long, normal to this line? You might think that would be quite tricky. But I can say, well, let's make the rays 10 long. So we've now got these 10 long rays. I can switch the rays to being normal rays. And really without any further ado, I've achieved what I wanted. Parallels is another thing you need to do an awful lot in drawing. So what if I wanted a parallel copy of this line offset so that it passed through that point? That's all you have to do. What if I wanted an ellipse fitted into the corner of this diamond? That's all you have to do. So the actual construction techniques, in particular using coordinates, both polar coordinates and Cartesian coordinates, we've made really, really easy and quick. A brief note on text. If I want some text, I click where I want it to go and say I'd like some text. And it always says text 1 because the plan is that you then do properties on it and you can edit these properties, but also the text content, and you'll see why that's important. I'm going to start typing in this box here, and you'll see it appear in the drawing here as I do. A, B, C, D, E, F. And you can see down here that it's going to overflow that line. So I'm going to come back up here, because in a drawing you want to control where the line breaks are so that you can curate the shape and size of each text block to fit into the needs of the drawing. So enter to go onto a new line, some more. And we're going to hit the line again, so I'm going to go over onto the new line. And what if I wanted some indented text? How about if I type in 2 spaces, space, space, foo, space, space, bar. And the reason I did that was to show you just how well indentation works. Because in nearly all other apps that wouldn't work because the letters are all different sizes. But we're using a special font where all the letters are the same size and even the spaces are. So if you look, all the letters form perfect columns. And you can always depend on that. It will always be that. And that's by design. Because that's actually an extremely efficient way of putting in tabular and laid out text in the context of short blocks, typically in a drawing. So we better come on to where the superpower was. Well, you haven't seen it actually yet. I'm going to delete that one and draw it again, but this time I'll use the superpower. So again, the ray length's already right. Normals, I'll select the point. Now this is where the superpower comes in. I really don't want to have to drag my cursor or my eyes over to the menu. And because I want to draw a line, I know I can just press the L key, because L is for line. And L is for line, A is for arc, T is for text, R is for rectangle, E is for ellipse, F is for fillet. I'm not going to patronise you further, I'm sure you can see that pattern. And that's really, really useful, not only because it makes you quick, but actually there's an even more important point. If I'm working on some fine detail here, to do with the ends of these arcs, the last thing I want to do is to move my eyes, my gaze, or my cursor out of that area. I want to concentrate on this area. And I can now. I can go line, line, arc. And as I said, during that time, I never had to look away from this. So I was able to stay in flow and focus on what I was doing. And that superpower is called the superpower that shall not be named. And we decided that because we couldn't think of a name that wasn't horribly boring or frightening, like the keyboard shortcut superpower. Because most people realise that keyboard shortcuts in most apps, unless you use them every day, you can never remember them, and they're usually quite complicated. Whereas I hope you'd agree that L for line, A for arc, T for text, R for rectangle, D for delete, U for undo, it's kind of just second nature. You don't really have to think about it. And it helps keep you in flow as well as speed you up. So that is the superpower that shall not be named. That's the end of all the drawings I'm going to show you. I hope you do feel that it's worth having a play with, and if you do, please talk to us. You can see in the menu how to here. You can either email us, including a copy of your drawing if you want, or we'd love you to join the community, DrawExact community on Reddit. And I'm hoping that the dialogue we have with all people that use it will influence the future direction of DrawExact, and also we want to help you as well. So please stay in touch. Thank you, that's the end.